everyone. Hope I'm audible. Thank you all for joining us wherever you may be joining from. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Today's webinar is, as you know, on the topic of the role of the Ethiopian religious institutions in Tigray genocide. It is organized by the Tigrayan Diaspora Council in Europe. Our panelists are Tigrayan scholars and friends of Tigray all over the world, from the EU and the USA. We're having a bit of technical difficulties with some of our panelists who are joining from Tigray. So some of them may be joining us over the phone. The panelists are including Abat Barhe, Dr. Tedros Assefa Teklum, Assistant Professor Temesgen Kasai, Memher Abi Addis, and Kadir Said. So our first panelist for today will be Abat Barhe. Abat Barhe is currently joining us from Maqala, so he might be joining us via telephone. Sorry for the inconvenience caused, but as you know, there are a lot of network issues, so it was something that was against our control. Abat just to give you a brief description about his background, he is originally from the Irob Eastern Zone in Tigray. He studied the first modern school in Ethiopia, Lideta Mariam Altenna Tsenila Mariam Adigrat. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. He proceeded to study philosophy and theology in the major seminar in the University of Rome. Abat was ordained 42 years ago and then continued into his postgrad studies at Milltown Institute, a branch of Gregorian University, Rome, and gained his master's in moral theology. Presently, Abat is a parish priest in Maqala and a board member of the Tigray Interreligious Council. Abat if he is available, if you guys can connect us with Abat and we can proceed.
Yeah. Can you hear us, Abat?
Hello, hello.
Yeah, you can proceed now.
Thank you. Thank you. And greetings first from the suffering Tigray. I will talk on the role of Ethiopian religious institutions in the Tigray genocide. To begin with, number one, before the war. 2 years before the genocidal war started, Tagaru, by that I mean Tigrayans, all over the country were hunted, killed, their property looted and destroyed. This started from their jobs, including military services. Deported from the places they lived for years. All these concluded by assassination of Eta Major Sahare and his colleagues. Sadly, no voice is uttered by religious institutions, by elderly and by Ethiopian elite. Number two, verbal genocide committed and conducted. Religious leaders and elite had voiced out openly verbal genocide life. Better to live with demons than with Tagaru. Tagaru came from hell and must go back to hell. Tagaru must be roasted and eaten up like gold and then accepted forgiveness. 105 million for 5 million. Before you shoot them, Christians make a sign of the cross and the Muslims say, Bismillah. You will never miss that. And Tigrayans must be raised from human memories. In other words, nihilism, etc., etc. No voices of religious leaders against all these atrocities. Number three, actual preparation for genocidal war. Alliance established with Eritrea, Turkey, China, Russia, Arab Emirates, etc., etc. Ethiopian military, regional militia, special army, and youngsters from all over Ethiopia forced to train and submit against the Tigrayan. Buying modern weapons, including drones, with the national budget, including budget from faith-based institutions, using the civil aviation for armament and military transportation, blockade of roads to and from Tigray and to any part of the country. Disqualifying legally conducted 2.7 million voters election in Tigray, etc., etc. No way affected by religious institutions and the Ethiopian elite except His Holiness Patriarch Matthias, who was under house arrest. Number 4, unjust war and its measures. Unjust because none of the 5 principles of just war was met. Kill all Tigrayans above 7 years old. Rape all and destroy property or take away. Destroy worship centers and take away national and international heritage. Kill and eat livestock. Burn the crops and take away the rest. Destroy trees and forests. Destroy or block all civil and social services, schools, medical centers, industries, communication and bank facilities. Stop air and land transportation. Use all these as means of war. That was the reality of the unjust war. No voice is again heard from religious institutions and elite. Even worse, they gave moral and financial support. Number 5, the outcome of the war. Poverty line triples. More than 2.2 million IDPs, internally displaced people. Over 700,000 civilians, including the religious leaders, massacred. Civilians killed and thrown off the cliff. Civilians killed and thrown into the Tigray River. Somebody recovered in the Sudan. Funerals forbidden. Civilians roasted alive. Over 126,000 age 8 to 9 raped, some by gang rape, in front of their husbands and family members. Civil services, as I mentioned before, banks, internet, etc., cut off. 360 degrees as means of war. 6.5 million in need of aid. 230,000 civilian servants, civil servants, and 50,000 prisoners are denied their salary and their pension. Electricity and water supply cut off. Air and land transportation prohibited. 80% of schools, 75% of health institutions, 68% of water supply destroyed. More than 30,000 children separated from their parents and families, etc. Yet again, no voices for religious institutions and Ethiopian elite. Catholic Church in Tigray. Like the rest, the church forgotten and deserted by national religious institutions and by Ethiopian Episcopal Conference. Catholic institutions, 52 schools, 6 parishes, 7 health institutions, 5 congregations in 13 different houses or locations affected badly. So many development work destroyed or damaged. 14 vehicles, including ambulances, taken away. And so we, as Catholic Church in Tigray, suffered immensely. Number 7 and the last one. Why Tigray International Council, Interreligious Council cut off itself from a national council? 1. All the way through, they opted silence and sided with the genocidal war, diabolic action. Their verbal genocide and the support of the invading internal and external forces. Number 3, giving deaf ear to our cry in such devastating situation. Number 4, undermining the suffering of humanity and the value of faith in institutions here in Tigray. Number 5, failing to call injustice by its proper name and ignoring faith-based institutions in Tigray. Number 5, overall, endorsing genocidal war on Tigray. Here, we are ready for reconciliation as we are faith-based institutions. But we need that those who commit such crime should openly apologize and forgiveness. For we need peace based on justice. So I am here ready for your questions, Mirat, if any clarification is needed. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, but over to you, Milat.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Abat. As you guys know, this is one of the many consequences that are being felt as a result of the war, the loss of connection, the loss of internet, the ability to be able to actually connect and have these kind of discussions has also been taken away from us. So unfortunately, Abat has had to join via telephone. So just to, Desta, if I can ask you some of the questions and you can pass on if that's okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay, great. Okay. So one of my questions was that the war in Tigray was painted as a war of good and evil. It was done in a way where Tigrayans were demonized, dehumanized, their humanity taken away from them. They were painted as almost as close to as a second coming of Satan. And it was done in a way where the dehumanization allowed the masses to feel okay at some of the discrimination, at some of the prejudice, some of the atrocities that had taken place. So does this rhetoric point to the fact that there is a moral decay in religious institutions, Or should we be pointing at the figures in society that are religious elites rather than the institutions?
Thank you, Milad. As you know, religious institution is supposed to be led by moral principles. In other words, code of conduct. Institutional, constitutional, national and international visions and missions is there. The decay could be inflicted the institution by introducing by individuals or could be by group, and that could involve the so-called institution. If I said elite or idiot, ignorant, I don't know what word I should, because if they are elite, the name is great. But when elite do something like this, probably the name should have been changed. So, religious institutions must guard themselves from such danger by vigilance based on principles, not on emotions and hatred. And that's what I said, because religious institutions in Ethiopia, like in other parts of the world, are well respected. They have a moral responsibility to be who they are, and they have to keep what they have. So I don't think if it is started in religious institutions such corruption, but individuals, decayed individuals have somehow decayed religious institutions. I hope religious institutions will think, stop and think, and back to their origin, back to their mission, back to their vision, and back to their goal. That's all I can.
Are you there, Bat'um? Hello? Let me call him back. They will be back, Milad.
So I think from what I understood from
Yeah,
okay, continue with your question.
Yeah, we can't hear you now. Over to you, Milad.
Yeah, so I think one of the major questions that have been arising in the last couple of months was what kind of realistic expectations can Tigrayans have in terms of how long their institutions within Tigray can survive with the detachment from the centralized religious institutions that are in Addis Ababa. What realistic expectations can we have, and what directions our institutions as Tigrayans are going to take a direction in?
Thank you, Milad. This is a very essential question. Religious institutions in Tigray used to have hierarchical, which in fact is vertical relations with Addis Ababa, except the Catholic party of Tigray, which used to have horizontal for a while, except the Catholic Church, financial and bureaucratic pressure. Yes, as we know, identity, dignity, history, and tradition matters more than the other mentioned pressures. Tigray religious institutions used to give more than they receive from Addis. So, as Tigray religious institutions, we rely on both ends in the faithful here. I am 100% sure they will support their denomination. So unless they will got upper hand, still they can survive. But I mentioned it earlier, still there is a way if our identity, our dignity, our history and tradition seen properly and valued accordingly, there is possibility continuing as a nation because we cannot, we have a saying, we are not angels not to get discomfort with each other, but nor devils not to reconcile. So there is a way, but the key is in the hands of our brothers and sisters in Addis Ababa.
Okay, thank you, Abatum. I think just to narrow down on the Catholic Church as an institution within Ethiopia. During the war, we saw various signs of communication between the Catholic institution and the government, giving it support, giving it a moral support as well as some do say financial. In what aspect can we look at this and say that there is also a rule of a few within the Catholic institution, and that these few did not consult with the wider institution, with the wider members of the institution, to go ahead and make such controversial kind of alignment with the government. Is there almost like you suggested earlier, within the Catholic Church also, is there a selected few that are completely drowning out the rest of the members within the institution?
Yeah, what you mentioned, that is true. That is what has been hurting us here. Fundamentally, the Catholic Church is principally, it is social system not based on solidarity and subsidiarity principles. That is clearly stated in the church we want to be. Pastoral letter of the Assembly of Catholic Bishops of Ethiopia, 2002. Unity in diversity concerning the culture, language, and liturgy is okay. But solidarity and subsidiarity, not only for the Catholic Church, but for the service the Church has been giving to all needy in Ethiopia, including in Tigray, shouldn't be forgotten. We are waiting for formal apology from the Cardinal. We are very much disappointed, to be frank. We are still continuing working partially as the diocese here is part and parcel of Caritas Internationalis. The main office is in Addis Ababa, which we call it Ethiopian Catholic Secretariat. But if they push the way they are acting, we can easily create connection with our partners and donors abroad. We can rely on people like yourself in diaspora, Syrians and friends of Tigray. So the Catholic Church has suffered and is still suffering. But I think the diocese will survive. Our diocese, as you know, covers the whole of Tigray and zone 2 of Afar. We serve all, despite their faith. 99.9 of our beneficiaries are not Catholic. Over 70% of our workers are not Catholic because we focus on human beings. And that's what matters.
Okay, thank you, Abato. I know that there is still some issues with connection and I do not want to hold you any further. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for, finding alternative ways and joining us, even though the connection was very poor.
Just one thing, I was expecting additional question. What do you want from international community, diaspora, Tegaru, and their friends? Just a minute for that. I want to voice it. One, please continue your peaceful struggle until justice prevails for Tigray and Tegaru. Second, please put pressure on the Ethiopian government to let the human rights observers and international media get into Tigray. Three, be serious about the motto, never again. Never again. It happened again, and I hope it will not. Thank you so much for bringing it to your media. I am ready to be available. Unfortunately, this is one of the problems we have. No power. So, you suffer it as we are suffering. Good evening and God bless.
Thank you so much, Abatom. I think that was a very important message you relayed at the very end, and I should have definitely posed that question to you. Your time is very appreciated. Like I said, I know the connection issues, which is why I'm being very hurried. So thank you for that message. I think everyone here hopefully has heard it and has internalized what Abatom has said. He has said that the struggle continues, the struggle for accountability, justice continues. The struggle in saying never again has to be tangible. It has to be mounted to something that's tangible for the people of Tigray. So thank you so much, Abatom. Thank you for your time and have a very good evening.
Thank you, Milat, and good luck for the panelists.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. God bless.
Bye-bye. Okay. As you guys have heard, that was Abatom. I'm so sorry that, he couldn't be here in terms of being actually in the Zoom call and you guys having an open kind of question session with him, because as you can see, he's joined via telephone, which makes it a bit inconvenient. But nevertheless, I think that was a great presentation. He's answered all our questions, and hopefully that has been very insightful for you all. Moving on, we've got our second panelist, who is Dr. Tedros Assefa Teklu. Dr. Tedros will be speaking on the religious genocide nexus in Ethiopia in the case of Tigray. Just to introduce Dr. Tedros is a PhD holder from Manchester University in the UK. He's an independent researcher based in the UK and affiliated with the Department of Systematic Theology and Sociology at Stellenbosch University in South Africa. As a research associate, formerly he served as a lecturer in theology and ethics in the Ethiopian Graduate School of Theology, where he was also the founding director of the Center of Christianity and Society. And Dr. Tedros is the author of The Politics of Mentonia Towards a Post-Nationalistic Political Theology in Ethiopia, which is published by Peter Lang. He's also edited two other books, both in the ethnic diversity and national unity, and also the moral pedagogies of Africa, from ethnic enmity to responsible cohabitation. Okay, Dr. Tedros, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Thank you for joining us this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be right now. I think I'll just let you take the floor and you can just present, and I will get into my questions much later. Thank you, Dr. Tedros.
Thank you very much for inviting.
No, we can hear you now. Go ahead. Yeah.
Can you hear me now? All right. Thank you for inviting me to speak on this important topic, but very painful, unpleasant, but it has to be discussed. So today I'll be presenting for the next half an hour, for 30 minutes, half an hour, and then I will try to address some of the questions that may be raised. So I've got some slides to share, and just bear with me for a moment. Sorry. This is taking a long time.
It's okay, Dr. Tedros. You can also send it, and I can share it for you. You are sharing the wrong window.
Oh, sorry.
You might need to stop sharing and start sharing again. Stop the sharing and then start it again.
Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Good. All right.
You can put it on the presentation mode, Dr. Tedros.
Yeah. The next to the zoom in on the left hand side, there's a small button which you could click next to the zoom. No. To your right, sorry. Your right. Right again.
What? The next one.
This is the reading view.
No, the one. Yeah. This works as well, right?
Yeah, that one. The last one.
All right. This one?
Yes.
Okay.
If you press it again, it should work.
Sorry. Is it appearing now? What about now?
I can't see your mouse anywhere.
Okay. So shall I stop and start again, or?
No, I can't see where your cursor is, but next to the zoom where it says 100% on the left hand side, the very last button, if you click on that, it should work. Yeah, so bring your mouse down, bring your cursor down. Yes, that very last button. To your right, to your right. To your right.
Sorry, where?
To your right, to your right. I can't see the color. Yeah, right. One more. Yes. No. Yeah, there. Perfect. Yeah.
Is it perfect now?
No, nothing has changed. But it's okay. Maybe you could just go through the slides as they are.
All right. Okay. Yeah, thank you for my illiteracy, bearing with my illiteracy. So as I've said already, it's a very painful topic. So in the next few minutes, I'll be sharing some of my ideas. And I'll have three basic sections in my presentation. First, I would like to speak about, after introducing a little bit, the conditions for the nexus, what makes this possible for religion and genocide to intersect, and the nexus of religion and genocide. How did Ethiopians, religious institutions and religious leaders and religious ideas interact with the genocidal campaign against Tigray, and whether there is a post-genocide reconciliation. So first, let's start with the definition. When we say religion, just the standard definition that you can find in dictionaries is that it's a particular system of faith and worship. And genocide, simply defined, it's an intentional and systematic extermination of people, either in part or in whole. So this people group could be an ethnic group, a national group, or a religious group. Before that, I would just to speak about these two possible premises, caveats. I would say there is a tendency among people to sort of consider such talks as coming from a particular ethnic standpoint. So I don't want my broader audience to dismiss this as simply coming out of a self-interest in one's own ethnic group. People who know me before have been speaking out against atrocities in other regions as well. So I would like them to consider this as a kind of humanistic critique. So I'm not coming from this particular standpoint, my own ethnic background, to speak against other ethnic groups. The second is the religious standpoint. I'm not speaking because I belong to a certain religion, religious sect, which is opposed to another one. So I just want my audience not to consider it in that way. It's not a religious polemics. Even if I happen to critique religion, it's in order to save it, not to reject it altogether. So I'm not coming from, of course, a non-religious standpoint. I myself am a religious follower in the Protestant church. So if I happen to speak about the Orthodox, I don't have any ulterior motives against the Orthodox.
Dr. Tedros, have you received a request to control your screen? Can you see a request to control your screen?
Yeah.
If you can just approve that so we can fix the slideshow view.
Okay. Just approve it?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem. So about the conditions for the nexus. So what makes it possible for religion and genocide to intersect? I would like to approach this generally from the relationship between the sacred and the secular. As you can see on the screen, there are three possible ways or modes in which the secular and the sacred can interact. And I just apply this to the relationship between religious institutions and the state. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I'm trying to...
Nesta, if you could just enable editing at the top and then exit the notification.
I think I did.
It's still there, I think.
Let's see. I think it's a problem with the... Can you see my cursor, Melad?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a problem with the PowerPoint.
The PowerPoint is still needs to be, the enable editing is still there. The notification is still there.
Yeah, I'm trying to click on it, but it doesn't seem to work.
Can you exit it?
Can you see my cursor?
No, I can't.
I think the best way would be if you can send the slides to my email, Dr. Tedros, and then I'll share them for you. If it's okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm
okay,
so sorry for the inconvenience.
No problem, no problem.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Just stop sharing while you send the email, Dr. Tedros.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry everyone, technical difficulties, as you know. But the enable editing was not working.
Right. Can you see my slides right now?
Yes, I could, but it's still not full screen. So
Yeah, I'll make it now.
yeah, perfect. So Dr. Tedros, you could just call out next slide when you want your slide to change.
Okay.
So do you want me to go to the next slide, Dr. Tedros?
Maybe the next three.
Okay. Here?
The next one, please.
Okay.
The next one. Yeah. So how do the sacred and the secular interact? What I would like to share with you is this just three modes. The first one is unity, in which case we have religion and the secular state merged together. And in this case, religion just falls under the problem of uncritical subordination by the state. And the next one is the separation. As you know, in our Ethiopian constitution, there is a clear indication that the state and religion are separate. So they are autonomous in their own rights. So in this case, the religious institutions are enabled to have a critical distance between themselves and the state. And that makes it possible for the religious institutions to make a critique of the state as well, and maybe confront the state on certain points of divergence. And the third one is synergy. Because of common interests, the state and religious institutions can have a constructive interaction. I call this synergy. Can you pass to the next slide? Now there is a problem of the blurring of the distinction between the secular and the religious. So sometimes we can find some religious elements in the secular. So there's no complete delineation between these two. I just take an example from the German experience. There was this German jurist and political theorist by the name Carl Schmitt. So he came up with this idea before the Second World War, before the Holocaust. All significant concepts of the modern state are secularized theological concepts. I just want to give you an example. For example, sovereignty. So who is the sovereign? According to Carl Schmitt, the omnipotent God becomes the sovereign lawgiver. So the sovereign is the one that has a decision over life and death. And he used the theological metaphor of miracle. So the miracle is that which suspends the law. So he came up with the idea of the law of the state of exception or state of emergency, which gives authority to the sovereign to exercise power without any restriction. We find such kind of intellectual ferment before the Holocaust. In our case, in Ethiopia, we haven't seen much of an intellectual ferment, but if we have noticed the social media, there has been a lot of genocidal discourse going on, and religion was also used in such discourses. Can you pass to the second slide? And about the religious. So in this scenario, the religious is instrumentalized by the secular. Or in other words, the state controls or manipulates religious institutions and religious ideas. So I don't want to take much time on theoretical debates, but just to highlight the possible intersection between religion and the secular, I would like to focus on these three. Othering. Religion can contribute to the othering of a certain population within a country. For example, in constructing and dehumanizing the ethnic others. So in the case of Tigray, we have seen such othering, and religion took a role in that. And the second one is justification, justifying the war as just, and killing without any moral restraint. And then the third one is authorization, giving genocide as the right hand, and grounding genocide in divine mind or divine will. Can you pass to the next slide, please? So where is the nexus in the Tigray war? How did Ethiopia's religious institutions, religious leaders, and religious ideas interact with a genocidal campaign against Tigray or Tigrayans. To the next slide, please. I would like just to give some more background. Before the othering of Tigrayans, we can notice the nationalistic absorption of Christianity. As you know, Ethiopian history is replete with different connections or relations between the state and religion. And the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has been considered as a custodian of Ethiopian nationalism. So it's possible to see such background, underlying these genocidal campaigns. And the current trends, if we focus on messianic politics, especially after the coming to power of Prime Minister Abiy, we have seen many religious ideas entertained in the social media, and the different biblical images, metaphors have been used. For example, the figure of Moses was interpreted, interrelated with the coming of the Prime Minister and the Prosperity Party. The nativity narrative was interpreted in new light, like the birth of Jesus in a manger, and the birthing of the Prosperity Party, and the persecution or the execution of children, babies. So these were also interpreted as the work of Herod or Herods or the Herodians. So there was this friend-enemy distinction which was emerging. And again, during those times of the euphoria, the people were considering the new party and the Prime Minister as Moses, who would, just as Moses led Israelites out of Egypt into the promised land, so Ethiopians were promised to be ushered into a new era of democracy. So in that context, we can see the construction of Tigrayan otherness, especially with the Oromara alliance. As you know, alliance making is also enemy making. So the construction of Tigrayan otherness was related to that kind of political development. So Tigrayans became Ethiopia's others, predominantly Orthodox. For the Protestant, the Tigrayan others were constructed as having a very hard heart, which is not fertile to receive the gospel of Jesus Christ. So they were considered as non-religious, or so to say, unreceptive of the gospel. And for the Muslims, they were regarded as people who persecute Muslims or who do not allow them to build mosques, for example, in the city of Aksum. And such kinds of otherness were constructed. Can you pass to the next slide, please? As you can see, this Orthodox priest was just reiterating what the Baba Ishatu said earlier on. These people are mad, and sort of preemptive eating was proposed by this priest. They are the hyenas. We have to eat them before they eat us. So Tigrayans were constructed as other, as unrepentant Christians, even by the Orthodox priest. These Orthodox people were regarded as religious, who refused to be baptized in water to repent. So if they don't repent, then they must be baptized by fire. So hellfire was the destiny for Tigrayans. Let's pass to the next slide. So with a hate speech, we have different labelings like Yakanjib, junta, monsters, demons, people who surpass Satan himself, and the Zendo, the largest species of the snakes. So most of these labels are sort of religious terminologies and language used in the hate speech against Tigrayans. Next slide, please. As you know, ISAT openly declared war against Ethiopians way before the coming of the new prime minister. 95 million Ethiopians against 5 million Tigrayans. So the war was sort of justified. So this is constructed as a holy war against evil Tigrayans. The next slide, please. So the second nexus is just justification. So the war was constructed as a war between good and evil. As you can see on the webpage of the Ethiopian Defense Forces, you can see the TPLF portrayed as Satan, as Lucifer. And arguably, such labeling was not only confined to the TPLF, but by and large, it was attributed to Tigrayans as well. Let's pass to the second. So again, in the Ethiopian culture, there is this notion of give, based on the principle of sowing and reaping. People sow what they, people reap what they sow. So this comes from the scriptures, the Holy Scriptures. And this justified sort of retributive worldview. And this retributive worldview just became a contact point between the hate speech, which is circulating in the secular domain, to be related to the religious domain. So the extermination of Tigrayans was considered as a retribution. But by retribution, I don't mean the principle of retaliation, which can take into consideration proportionality. But this is just far from retaliation, because the limits of cruelty were surpassed, actually. So the justification was made by religious leaders, and religious ideas were used. Religious institutions backed this. Next slide, please. So Tigrayans were doomed to hell. Again, the metaphor of hell was also used. This is basically a religious idea, which was used in the secular campaign against the genocide. So the genocide rhetoric was not entirely secular, but it was mostly dominated by religious ideas. Next slide, please. Finally, it was authorization. By authorization, I mean the solidarity, the approval, endorsement shown by religious leaders, as you can see on the picture. Next slide. So this genocidal war was grounded in divine will, in divine mind. There were lots of sacred texts, especially from the Old Testament, used against Tigrayans, like Amalek, for example. In the Old Testament, the Jews exterminated Amalek. And so that kind of rhetoric was used against Tigrayans. And prophetic utterances in Protestant churches, this was very common, and prophetic message from obscure fathers. People were quoting different names. Finally, prayer and intercession were made in churches. I can myself witness a prayer in our church to expedite the law enforcement operation. Next slide. So finally, post-genocide reconciliation. I'm a bit hesitant to use the term post-genocide because I consider the genocide in Tigray as a process. In any case, that takes another argument. But for the time being, just let me focus on some of the things that we see today in the aftermath of the war, after the peace agreement. There's no formal remorse from the churches in Ethiopia, and no initiative for reconciliation. What we see instead is ecclesiastical feud, the church feud, with the divisions within the churches themselves, interreligious polemics between Protestant churches and the Orthodox, and the ethnic tensions that exist as undercurrent. And finally, no pastoral letter was issued by the headquarters in Addis Ababa. Finally, previously I mentioned Carl Schmitt within the German context. For the Ethiopian situation, there is no, perfect parallel, but as I've already mentioned, there was some similarities. The secular, we find many religious ideas secularized by the state and by non-state political actors. And unfortunately, we haven't seen any theological developments afterwards. In the German context, for example, the theology of the cross was emphasized after the Holocaust. Theologians like Jürgen Moltmann and Johann Baptist Metz wrote on the theology of the cross symbolic of the crisis. It's opposed to the theology of glory, which is emphasized by discourses of sovereignty and so on. But in the Ethiopian case, although the cross has a very central place within the Christianist culture, there are no meaningful theological articulations that coming out of that. The one I remember was a speech by Abuna Matthias, the Patriarch of Ethiopia. He used one of the holidays to relate the cross to the Ethiopian situation, but that was before the war happened. So overall, this is just representative of my idea. If you have any questions, I'm ready to respond.